Shrine, saying that they reflect the lingering ghosts of Japan's militarism and a wrong attitude towards its history of aggression. In a statement, the embassy urged Japan to make a clean break with militarism, face up to and reflect on its past and win the trust of its Asian neighbors and the international community. Through concrete actions, the embassy said such visits send the wrong signal at a time when regional trust and reconciliation are needed, calling on Tokyo to take responsibility for its history and demonstrate sincerity through deeds, not words. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Madhav Nalapat. He's an editorial director at TSG. Thank you, Madhav Nalapat, for staying with us. Now, looking at this news, given China's own human rights records and its assertive foreign policy, isn't there an element of hypocrisy in China condemning Japan over its historical action while facing its own issues in places like Xinjiang as well as Tibet?
You're quite right about Xinjiang and Tibet, not to mention Manchuria and Inner Mongolia, which were forcibly occupied by the Communist Army from 1949 onwards. But the reality of the situation is that ordinary Chinese, not just communists, but ordinary Chinese basically can't forgive the Japanese for what they did in China during World War II. I mean, the rape of so-called of Nanjing is now enshrined in history, and you have museums to that in both Taiwan as well as in the PRC. One situation in which both sides appear to have the same view. But the fact of the matter is that the Japanese are not going to stop visiting Yasukuni Shrine. It's a memorial for among them are a few people who are very much the leaders of the war, and the reality is that the Japanese have a tradition, an old Shinto tradition of revering their ancestors. So this is basically probably the relatives. This is directed at winning the vote of the relatives of those who basically perished, including as a consequence of the atomic attack on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. As for Japanese, moving back from the militaristic history, I think the Japanese have done so admirably. I mean, they are now the best friends of the same power that was the only power that launched, that till to date has launched nuclear weapons against any other country. And that's the United States against Japan during the close of World War II. So the Japanese have moved away from the history, the militarism, but the reality is you cannot change your history. And the history is so many hundreds of thousands of Japanese were killed in that war. I mean, the Japanese forces overran Malaya, Singapore, large areas which were under foreign occupation, French, British, and Dutch, and basically defeated them until they were themselves defeated by the Americans, notably on the high seas by their carrier fleet being destroyed in revenge for Pearl Harbor. But they're not going to stop visiting Yasukuni Shrine. I've been there, and I've been there basically because my host was actually one of his ancestors has been interred there. So I went there with him, and I found it a very quiet and tranquil place. I don't think it's militaristic in any way, and frankly, the Chinese Communist Party is trying to get popularity on the basis of rekindling memories of what the Japanese forces admittedly did in China during World War II. But yes, I quite agree with you. It's hypocritical because the Chinese have inflicted terrible, terrible human rights casualties and violations on Tibetans, on Uyghur, on Manchurians, on Mongolians, and including many Han Chinese. There's no question. There's more into hypocrisy there.
Yes. I also agree with you that Japan cannot change their history no matter how long it has been. Thank you very much, Madam Nalapat, for joining us today and sharing your insight throughout our news. Now we move